Oh. All right, so that worked. Okay, so again, hello everyone. Quick run through of the agenda for the presentation. It's a 30-minute presentation, and we'll go through the common questions around the CoE, a quick primer on why bother establishing a BPM CoE, and then the meat of it, look at the core capabilities that a CoE should have and what are the approaches, how do you go about building the CoE. And finally, we'll look at how ProSoft can help and some of the work that we've done. And we'll summarize the whole thing, and then there'll be a 5-minute question and answer session at the end. So let's first consider the typical questions which this webinar will attempt to answer. And these questions tend to be operational in nature, questions around what are the roles in my CoE, what is the funding model, and what are the capabilities that my CoE should have. And we will answer these questions, but before we do that, let's just quickly look at why even bother with the CoE as far as BPM is concerned. So I think the best way that I can put it is that with a CoE, there's a greater chance that you will realize the full value of BPM. And what do I mean by the full value of BPM? It's not about just having a successful process-based solution in place. But the full value of BPM means there's better collaboration within the organization, especially between business and IT. There's better visibility and understanding between the link between the goals and the process activities. So, and this visibility is organization-wide, not just with the subject matter experts or the people that are dealing with a particular line of business. And of course, it is the capability of that organization to effect continuous process improvement. So that is the full value of BPM, and a CoE does not mean that you will necessarily realize the full value, but it does mean that there's a greater chance of success in realizing that value. So if you have to break it down further, you will need a nodal agency, given that we recognize that it is a specialized skill. It does need organizational alignment. It does need methodologies to be developed. It does need skills, specialized skills and knowledge. You need to have some mechanism by which you can train and mentor and inculcate more people into that discipline. There are two really core capabilities in BPM, and that's process discovery and process development. So you need to understand how you go about doing opportunity identification, because even at that stage, BPM has something to offer. And there are practices and there are ways in which opportunity identification is undertaken, and everything that comes out of that, the goals, the business case, that value is filtered down to everybody in the team, especially the ones that are then going to be doing some work in realizing those goals. And of course, very typically of any discipline, CoE will help you create that knowledge base, create shared utilities. You will have an organizational-wide visibility into initiatives, and will make sure that your goals are aligned, or your delivery is aligned to the goals. So typical issues that you would have without having a CoE, and it really boils down to the fact that different people have different perspectives. So for example, we've had cases in our experience when we ask people what you mean by BPM, especially on the business side. We have answers like, okay, BPM means business intelligence. It means a set of dashboards. While that is true, that a set of operational dashboards is part of BPM, but that is only part of the picture, right? Because a dashboard would almost be the effect. It would imply that I'm more reactive. I look at an issue in my dashboard and then I go about looking for the cause. While BPM works right up front in the cause itself. So it covers not just the effect, it looks at the cause as well. Or you might have people that don't think they need BPM. We've had instances, say for example, in financial reporting, where a CFO might not think BPM has any relevance to him, but one of the biggest issues in financial reporting is data quality. And again, you might think I have the best software where all my I consolidate all my data and I build my financial reports, but then there are people that enter that data and they can make mistakes. And if you had a process-centric view, you would then know what are the rules I need to apply at what points to then ensure my data quality is at the level that I need it to be, and therefore I can meet my financial reporting goals. Outside of this, the other issues that we see with BPM is the tendency to treat it like an IT automation project, and that means that all the cons of a typical IT delivery setup are replicated in a BPM setup. And what that means is, say, the goals of the initiative may not necessarily be visible to the process developer down the line. And there isn't effective collaboration between business and IT, and most importantly, there isn't any joint ownership of the deliverable between business and IT. And of course, the biggest thing is that there are longer delivery times, and the value is realized much later instead of a more agile model. You can also have issues like never developing a critical mass of skills within your organization. You're inconsistent. You might have certain successes, but they are not replicatable. So it's again on a project basis. Some projects are successful. Even the definition of success is not really quantified, and it's based on what somebody feels like. So these are typical issues, and that's what a CoE will seek to remediate by looking at core capabilities and looking at methodologies and educating the organization on those capabilities. So if you look at really, if you break this down, there are really two ways you can go and establish a CoE. There's either a top-down CoE or a bottom-up CoE. And I'll elaborate on that a little later. But if you look at a typical program journey, as far as BPM is concerned, there are certain activities that have to be done. So the first activity is you have to understand your process landscape or a part of it, right? You may not be able to document and understand and analyze the entire process landscape, but you might, based on the instinct of the executive leadership, have a segment of a line of business where you know that there is potential to apply BPM principles, and then you elaborate that. You have to build the business value, decide on a project, and implement that project, scale it up to a program, and then take it to the organization. So if you went the route of just using your regular practices for opportunity identification and found a pilot project, and tried to implement that successfully, and then scaled it up into a program, that's more of a bottom-up CoE. And you, of course, do that with an eye on best practices, methodologies, etc. But essentially, you look to solve a smaller problem, and then you scale that up into a program, and that's a bottom-up CoE. Or you could do it top-down, where you really you know that a CoE will establish the value. You identify all the roles, the team, the appropriate funding model, and you really look at your entire process landscape. And I'll go into more details later. There are other nuances. CoE can be IT-led or business-led. CoE can be centralized or federated. And these are nuances. It will mean nuances to your organizational alignment. But as far as capabilities are concerned, it doesn't matter. The nature doesn't matter. So it's more a difference in the details as far as the profiling of the CoE. The core capabilities for a CoE can be categorized into 4 buckets around strategy, governance, skill, and technology. Now, on the right-hand side here, there are it's broken down into additional capabilities, and all of these map to these high-level categories of strategy, governance, skill, and technology. But from a CoE perspective, you definitely have to have a methodology. There are two core capabilities, like I mentioned, process discovery and process development. You have to have a methodology around how you go about opportunity identification, how you go about process discovery, what kind of visibility does the organization have to that exercise? Is it something that it's done once and then it's forgotten about and nobody really knows about whatever happened during that exercise, or is there a way that you can make sure that this knowledge is available at any point to anyone that's interested? And of course, the way you do process development. Now, BPM is all about continuous process improvement, so it lends itself better, or it has an affinity to more agile-based development models. But you have to build a methodology that works for your organization, and you have to adapt agile techniques to your process improvement initiative as well. There are skills and knowledge that you have to develop. There are discipline-related skills and knowledge, and there are tool-specific skills and knowledge. And that is something that the CoE must develop for it to provide value to the organization. You have to have a funding model that works. You have to have the appropriate infrastructure so that you can ultimately deliver. Now, not all process improvement initiatives have a technology end, but most do, because once you do your analysis, you realize there is some bit of automation that will help improve the process, or it could just be that you can give more systematic visibility to the process using technology, instead of having somebody go with a stopwatch and follow the users while they are executing the activities of a process. A tool might help you actually get that kind of information. You also have to have effective monitoring and reporting. That's how you make sure that you realize the goals, and you also have to monitor and understand your CoE success. So these are the core capabilities that you have to consider when you define your CoE, and when you have capabilities, you have to then map it to your operational performance of those capabilities. So how good are you in doing this capability, and what you need to do to improve that capability. So, and the other thing to consider is the organization and funding, and this again doesn't change much between a bottom-up or a top-down CoE. The roles are the roles. It doesn't matter whether you build it more organically or you build a bigger team up front. I think first thing about organization to note is that BPM needs a direct and a dotted line to the executive leadership. I mean, it seems obvious, but BPM is cross-functional. BPM many times needs changes in organizational behavior. Those are very difficult to do in a bottom-up manner. So there is some kind of executive mandate and understanding that is needed, and that is not so difficult nowadays, because most CIOs and COOs have BPM right up there in their strategic objectives as from a cost-saving perspective. In fact, I think outside of leveraging cloud, BPM is the second most strategy, CIO strategy to affect operational efficiency. But this is definitely required from a BPM perspective. I seem to have an issue with my slide again. So moving on, the CoE structure, again, there are really two core segments to the CoE. There's a core, the process team, and the architecture and the development team. Again, focusing on the two core disciplines, which is process discovery and process development. There is an executive steering committee. That's where the goals come down for the teams to consider, and based on the goals, the processes that directly impact those goals are considered in the analysis. There's of course the process owner. That's a very important role to be identified. And of course, once you have an established CoE, you'll be running multiple process improvement projects. And people from the BPM CoE will be seated in all these teams. You will have multiple process and project teams. You may have a program manager as well in that scenario, but you will also have this business process owner delegate board that are involved in each of these. So there's representation really from all these identified roles within the delivery streams. So typical delivery roles that you have, at a minimum, you need a process analyst, a process developer, and a process owner. But this is the absolute minimum. Because these are the two skills that are needed to affect the change or the solution that you need. And of course, you need a process owner for the governance aspect of it and to ensure that the process analyst and the process developer understand the goals of the process improvement initiative. But in most cases, you would need something more. You would need some more roles. You would need a technical architect, because most business processes are cross-functional, and they deal with a multiple number of back-end applications. So you would need a technical architect. A process architect is just a roll-up role to the process analyst. Depending on your process delivery model, you might have a Scrum Master if it's agile-based, which is something that we recommend. You may have a overall BPM Program Manager as well, someone that's already experienced in delivering a few BPM projects, and now once you've scaled up your initiative, you need to be able to manage, you need someone that can manage multiple projects. You will have admins as well for your infrastructure. So these are the typical roles, and a CoE needs to have capabilities in all these areas. As far as the funding model is concerned, now you will have to come up with a funding model that works best. Now, in a bottom-up CoE, the funding model is usually business-driven, which is, okay, there is a business project and you make the business case, and so it's entirely based out of a business cost center for which work is being done. But there are benefits to having a BPM operational cost center as well, because there is value to be had even upfront, even while you're going through the motion of opportunity identification and making the business case. If you do it using best practices, you end up breaking down your processes and you end up creating the kind of visibility that has tremendous value. So you have to consider, I think the most important thing here is to consider a funding model that's sustainable. So it shouldn't be just focused on a specific project that has a business sponsor. So now coming to the details, there are really two ways, like I mentioned, and this is based on established principles as well as our experience on the field. And we've learned some of the nuances, not just from our successes, but also from our failures. And I will talk to some of the typical mistakes. But a bottom-up CoE does not need that a bigger investment picture, so it is popular. But there are these 7 steps to executing a bottom-up CoE, which is you have to build a steering committee, you have to figure out a particular project that you can do as your first project, understand the value proposition completely, understand any gaps in your tooling, in your platforms, and then execute on this target project and scale it up to a CoE. So basically go from a project to a program to a CoE. And of course, various points on this journey, we have established at ProSoft have established best practices that we can help you with. So as far as the steering committee is concerned, in your bottom-up CoE, this is your initial governance structure, and the steering committee gives you a business segment or a process chunk to look at, from which to extract the first project where you can show the appropriate value. They give you that commitment and that initial seed funding for people to go about doing that, as well as that initial process chunk or that business segment to look at. So within that, then you have to break it down and still identify a suitable target project. I mean, the key criteria really when you're starting out to identifying a project is don't go for necessarily the project that will get you the maximum returns, because more likely than not, it's also going to be complex, and you'll end up spending a lot of time, and you'll get into a typical traditional IT delivery mindset where value is not delivered quickly enough. So really the criteria is but at the same time you do want to pick a process or a set of activities that have a low level of maturity, so there are significant opportunities to optimize. And so it should be low level of maturity, high impact, but at the same time it should have a smaller complexity for first time project. At that point you actually start, then once you've identified the boundaries of your first process improvement process, you then start drilling down further into that process. You actually effectively start undertaking the next part of process discovery, breaking down that process, identifying how the different activities in that process relate to the goals for that process, and essentially building the business case. And the elaboration of that process discovery actually goes deeper than just making the business case. It is also understanding what are the integrations needed. So there is a technical element to the analysis as well, which needs to be done, as well as you need to understand any gaps within your current platform and within your current organization in terms of realizing the full value. So once that is done, you obtain the executive sponsorship, and this is not just to actually get the delivery team going to build on this process improvement project, but also for any kind of additional tooling that you might need, things like that. But once you have the executive sponsorship, you then organize to deliver that BPM pilot based on the roles that we just spoke of. You will need a analyst, you will need a process developer, you will need technical architecture, you will need a lot of supporting roles as well in terms of database admins, integration developers. On the business side, you have to have identified process owner that will ensure that every bit of functionality is evaluated against the goals, and so on and so forth, as well as your process users. And then finally you actually look to deliver the pilot. Now here again, there are some nuances in BPM to a traditional IT delivery. So when if you look at this from the lens of traditional IT development, people tend to think, okay, definition is requirement analysis or requirement elaboration, and development is development. But that's not really the case here. Definition is part of process discovery, and process discovery runs the entire gamut from opportunity identification down to high-level design. And it's important in BPM, and this is speaking from our experience, everybody likes continuous process improvement. So if I tell business that don't wait 1 year to get the full value, let me deliver some value to you in 3 months, there are very few people that will say no to that. They're happy and they like the idea that some of the value gets realized sooner. But the problem that happens with BPM projects is that, okay, you do that, you understand, you figure out what value you can deliver in 3 months, you build it, you put it in, they start using that little chunk, Then you do the next part, and now the iteration 2 is put into production, and it ends up breaking iteration 1. So with BPM, you have to really make sure that whatever the design of your process lends itself to continuous process improvement. You have to understand how the data is organized, the data architecture of your process. And all of this is actually done in process discovery. So process discovery is not just requirement validation and building the business case. It is high-level design. It is data architecture design. It's process design. And it's where you're considering all these questions. What is the impact? Okay, so if I'm going to do build this much of functionality in the first month and have people start using it, what's the impact when I make these enhancements in the second phase? Because BPM processes are long-running processes. You have to consider the impact of subsequent changes to what is there in production. This is not something that you do in a traditional application setup. When you put in a new version, the whole application and all the data in that application starts using that new version. But in a BPM, that may not be the case. You may have data that continue to use the old version of the process, while newer data created within the process application use the latest version. So there are a lot of nuances when you, the moment you say continuous process improvement, and all of that for the given process has to be addressed in the discovery phase itself. Now, as far as development is concerned, that is closer to a typical IT agile-based methodology. You build a chunk of value in a month's time, and you have a playback. A playback is where everyone, including the process owner, reviews what has been built so far. So now in this slide, you see various roles identified, and they have a primary role in various phases. But in a playback, everybody is involved, and that is the core idea from a methodology point of view. It's not you just coming in. You know that you need your house, and all you're really concerned about is that the house be built, and then you can go in and start living there. But it is you being able to evaluate, really understand that whole process of building the house, and have a lens as that house is built. It just gives you a better understanding, and in fact is of a big help sometimes in resolving issues and identifying issues up front. So that's the typical methodology, but that's what you're in a bottom-up scenario. There is a chance that you might fail because you would probably have done the business case evaluation in your typical way, and you would just move on to the development, but you wouldn't consider some of the other design questions up front during the process elaboration and discovery. And that's the biggest issue that we've seen with these initiatives, which want to start small and do not take more, say, experienced help from outside, is that this whole continuous improvement idea, that dream turns sour very soon. So, but hopefully everything goes well for you. You deliver the first prototype, and now that you've established that certain methodologies, you've established how a BPM as a concept can deliver value to your organization, you then scale that up to a CoE. You establish the roles that are now identified. Hopefully more funding is now forthcoming, and there are other business units lined up with projects of their own, and you use that and you scale it up. So that's a bottom-up CoE. Now, just quickly summarizing the steps again. It's form the steering group for the governance initially, identify the suitable project, elaborate that, consider continuous process improvement issues, because the reality with process improvement is that any pilot project, any project, you're never really done with it. There could be an opportunity to improve it further later on. So you have to consider everything that you need to be able to affect continuous process improvement. Sometimes that just means investing in automated regression testing. So you deliver the first pilot, show the value, and then you scale it up. And as you're doing this, you have an eye on the methodology, because that is important. The success or failure of a single project is not so important as the inputs to continuously adapt and promote success. So, but you do it in this iterative way, one project at a time. The other way would be to do a top-down CoE, in which you get the mandate and the funding up front. You identify all the roles, you fill those roles, you identify the skills, you close the gap in the skills by hiring or appropriate training, but you do all of that up front. So this does mean that there is a bigger commitment, funding commitment to a top-down CoE. But, and again, these are essentially the steps that you will have to undertake. These are the things that you have to kind of check off in your list to say that, okay, I have a CoE now, sufficiently staffed and with the right skills that can now start executing on operational excellence within my organization. And the benefit really with a top-down CoE, the characteristic that we have seen with a top-down CoE is that once you mandate this kind of CoE, the focus initially is on understanding the process landscape, the entire process landscape. So you look at the core business processes, break them down, etc. So there is a lot of time spent not on trying to get that first project that I can quickly do and show value and so that I can get more funding. It is, in fact, at the outset on describing and documenting with the appropriate visibility and with the appropriate collaboration the process landscape within the organization. And we've seen that just doing this exercise realizes a lot more value. And it also leads to early alignment between business and technology. You can also have process improvement initiatives that are just business focused. So the business comes together to do process improvement. But that is also not optimal because you need to have technology involved in there too. It can be, like we said, it can be business driven, it can be IT led, but there needs to be appropriate representation, because ultimately many process improvement opportunities will have a technology component, will have an automation component. So doing executing a top-down CoE, in fact, leads to early alignment between business and technology around the discipline of process discovery. And you can show value before even a single line of automation code is written. And in fact, it is not so much tool-centric. At that point, it is more about roles and methodologies and how you go about making sure that people have the visibility to the exercise. And a top-down CoE can also be married with analysis techniques like Lean Six Sigma at the outset, and there are various others as well. Business process improvement initiatives, they are very similar, but a top-down CoE tends to have more of a process analysis and process-centric focus right up front, which is of a lot of value. So what ProSoft can do, given our experience in this space, is we can actually do an assessment, and we can list out the capabilities that you have and your operational performance of those capabilities. So we can profile your CoE if you've already started on that journey of organizing and building a CoE. We can qualify that CoE. We can look at capabilities, and this is a time-boxed exercise, but that gives you an idea, benchmarked against industry best practices on where you stand and where you can improve. And like I said, it's something, it could be as simple as your capability for automated regression testing. It's just something that you should consider, because that is a capability that will ultimately help you realize continuous process improvement. Because if you, again, don't guard against the pitfalls of making sure that I can, in fact, deliver code or any structural change to a process on a regular basis, you have to make sure that you have that capability. It shouldn't be that just that process of trying to put in value every quarter becomes an issue. So there are things, so these capabilities can really be broken down at a finer level, and we can actually benchmark it against industry standards. So other than that, of course, ProSoft has experience in every point in the BPM journey and in the CoE journey. We have folks that understand funding issues, organizational issues, technology issues, and we have also, based on our experience, built templates across verticals that can be used, can be leveraged, and these help sometimes in a bottom-up scenario where some of our frameworks can be used to even to shorten further the development time of a particular initiative. So we have this library of templates, and as well as our experience, and we can at any point in your BPM journey provide the skills or the knowledge that you need to complete the CoE. So to summarize, like we mentioned, this is a specialized discipline. It's not just about technology, so you shouldn't make BPM tool-centric or technology-centric. But not that the tool or the technology is not important. It is an aspect, but there is more to it, and success or failure will depend on all of these. Or I wouldn't say success or failure. I think the better way to put it, realizing the full value of BPM will depend on many more things than just what technology or what tool that you use. Of course, the tool that you have needs to be able to scale to an enterprise level and things like that. Again, the key thing really is organizational. So it is about that effective communication and collaboration across the organization, and that will come with the appropriate levels of visibility to the core processes within the organization. And really, one of the principles of BPM is that there is no such thing as a dumb question, and that everyone should have the visibility required. Even though I might have nothing to do with account servicing, it would be nice if there is something in the internal cloud where I could actually see where how my particular organization undertakes account servicing or claims management. And even if this process is just done within one application, it's still, there is a value to breaking down the set of activities that need to be performed and what a screen looks like in a particular activity, and have that available on the cloud somewhere so that anyone could go in and look at how my organization is doing policy management or claims management or account servicing or any functional area that you can think of. In our experience, a top-down CoE model delivers value faster, and that usually is because top-down CoEs are more executive mandated, so they have that support of the executive leadership who are driving the CoE effort. So that also means that the appropriate level of funding is available. You can get the right skills that you need. And again, a top-down CoE tends to have a greater focus on first understanding the process landscape and establishing best practices around being able to identify opportunities on a continuous basis and being able to link them to your executive goals, and have a methodology around doing that again and again, and of course in a way that those goals filter down through the organization. So and I think the final thing is ultimately what you need to do from an organizational perspective is to list out the capabilities, because that is what it's all about. List out your capabilities for BPM and grade yourself operationally on how well you're doing against those capabilities. So if you have that, because remember the first we said the value ultimately is having that visibility. So if you have visibility into your operational performance, then you'll know where you need to improve. And that's ultimately what BPM is all about. It's about measuring to improve. So once again, I'll just quickly go over ProSoft's offering in this space. So essentially, it's around the analysis and adoption, where we are CoE-centric and organizational delivery-centric experts can help, and they can help by doing assessments. They can help you in the process of building your process inventory, and most importantly in the analysis. Because you can build, you can document your processes, but the real value comes in doing effective analysis. So you need to know how to build heat maps, how to really be able to communicate value to a wider audience. So the analysis piece is crucial. It's not just documenting, though documenting is very important, and it should be done in a way that there is visibility across the organization. It's not something that a subject matter expert is doing on their own and has the whole process documented on their laptop. It is about collaboration and visibility, but it's also about effective analysis. And ProSoft has a methodology called ProSoft Pure Analysis, where we look at core business processes and we model the level 1 processes and look at improvement opportunities, and then filter that down to a set of level 1 processes that are of more interest for now, and then drill them down further, create the level 2 models, etc., in a time-boxed manner to just elaborate a way that you can start doing process discovery. We also have offerings around doing quick starts in the BPM space, and of course, like this presentation shows, we can quantify what the capabilities of a CoE should be, and benchmark it against the industry standards. Finally, of course, training is a very important piece. So when you start on your CoE journey, you do need to build some capability in training, because the CoE becomes that nodal agency where the organization, where more people within the organization get inculcated into the discipline of BPM. So with that, I conclude the presentation, and Jack, you can open up the floor for questions. Thank you. Jack?
Hey, Chirag or Jack, you want to open the line for any questions?
Yeah, Shomu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry. Okay. Now, I was just thanking you for the great presentation, and I already see a quick question from Freddie, and the question for you is, on the organizational alignment, what is the role of the BPM director, and how does that role impact decision making at the level presented here?
So the role of the BPM director is, in fact, the connection between the executive leadership and being able to affect the organizational change that is needed, or the methodology change that is needed to effectively execute. So you do need to have someone that can immediately and effectively communicate any issues, as well as understand. Remember, the whole thing is, there is as far as opportunity identification is concerned, it's a funnel, right? So you have to have someone with the seat at the table when the goals of the organization are defined, understands what the goals are, and is able to relate it to process chunks that are then candidates for improvement, and so that kind of starts that whole opportunity identification process. So you need a link. Because where are the goals being set ultimately? The organizational goals are being set being set at the executive layer. So once now those goals have to be mapped into further lower level goals and finally into specific processes and activities that have a link to those goals. So you do need someone that has a seat at the table that understands that and can communicate that and make sure that there is that bidirectional communication within the overall CoE or the BPM delivery teams and the executive leadership.
Okay. Now, from the same gentleman again, would it be more up-down or bottom-up?
So, so we think honestly, process improvement is such a vast topic, and that's what BPM is all about. That it works better up-down, so top-down, because it's not just about technology. It's not necessarily always about any one thing. It is, like we said, I mean, if you actually went down the road of breaking down all your processes, you need champions within the organization when you undertake a new discipline. So you need to get people's time, which is a big challenge. Like we said, many important people within the organization may not think that BPM has any value to them. So you need, so these are all the typical issues that you're going to face, right? You won't get the right people at the right time. It's hard to organize the SMEs. It's hard to effect change. So you need that kind of mandate. You need champions that will help you in that journey. So usually that's more effectively done top-down instead of bottom-up. That doesn't mean bottom-up cannot succeed, but usually what we see is bottom-up takes a longer time to succeed because it's more people doing good work at the bottom that eventually gets the visibility in the wider organization, and then you know, people want to jump onto that bandwagon.
Sure. And also, how do you introduce that in an organization that doesn't have that and is traditionally like a banking?
Right. So that's an excellent question. So you have to look at get the theory that's out there, but you do need a champion. So that's where it really starts. So you need to organize, you need to get all the right material so that you can communicate the value proposition effectively and what you need. But bottom line is you do need a champion that understands the issues at hand and can relate it to. So for example, I mean, if you understand the banking space well, you understand typical issues. I mentioned, for example, financial reporting and data quality issues around financial reporting. Or it may be customer service issues. If you know that, so if you have an understanding of your organizational goals, I think that would be the first step. So what are your goals for this year, for the next year, for the next 3 years? The executive goals. So for example, if improving the customer experience, because now banks can no longer really compete on cost, maybe they want to compete on a better customer experience. Well, then you can outline, you can look at what are the processes and applications that have a direct bearing on customer experience, and make the case for BPM that way. But yes, you do need a champion, and the champion needs to have an understanding of the organizational goals and be able to relate it to BPM and thereby present the value proposition of BPM.
Thank you. And I see one more here. How do you initiate a Center of Excellence after the BPM platform has been in use for many years without guidance or standards?
Yes, that's a great question, and we have seen that in a few clients. And usually, though, the best place to start is because of the issues that you find. So, for example, some of the issues is that you don't have repeatable success. You may have some projects that are working well and some projects that didn't work well. where so usually that's how you make the case. You make the case by saying that we need to have a repeatable way to have success. So we need to make sure that the skills are consistent. I can get a consistent delivery that I need. So typically that is what that would be the path. You would first identify all the issues that you had on your journey so far, and then again a typical issue would be that yes, the platform is there, you've got a few solutions out there, but if you don't have any issues, then maybe for your particular organization it's fine, but then at the same time you would still want to have, say, how would you incorporate a new business unit into the BPM platform? You still need to be able to organize in some way to be able to elaborate best practices, to be able to elaborate methodologies, etc. So I would think the best way is to kind of understand what are the issues currently, and then see how a CoE will help address those issues, and that's the way you introduce and you build the CoE. And of course, the good thing with having an established a program or a platform already is that some of the skills you will have, but it's possible also that you may need to do some unlearning. So that's also possible.
And I think this is Chirag here from ProSoft. One of the important aspect also is if you look at what Shomu was talking about, an assessment workshop, that is something that can also gauge that what you can do to be a right CoE and tell you where you lie in the maturity aspect of it. And also a third-party expert is always helpful in a polarized environment to point out at the right things that needs to be looked at. So whether you're already down the path of BPM or want to identify who's the right champion, sometimes doing that assessment and calling a third-party expert helps you lay down the ground rules and say, hey, now we are going to do the BPM activity based on the COI ground rules that we laid down using the partner.
Yes, it always helps to have a third party give the bad news.
Okay. So with that, I don't see more questions. So let's wind up, and I would like to thank each and everyone who attended this webinar, and attendees who are interested in seeing this presentation are requested to send an email to me, jack@prosoftgroup.com. That way, I can send you a copy of this presentation to the people who are interested. Thank you, Shomu, once again for your time, and this is ProSoft Technology Group signing off. Thank you.